In this video I'm going to run through how to use the low poly Photoshop action. So in this video, the first photo that I'm going to open up, I'm just going to demonstrate how the action works, and then we're going to run through and open up a couple more photos and create some designs out of them using the action. So firstly, jump into Photoshop and we want to load up our action. So if we go to the window menu, scroll down to actions, the actions panel will appear here to the right. Click on this top right hand corner icon and select load actions. Select the low poly.atn file and it will appear here all ready to go. So next, open up your photo. So for this example, I'm just going to use this photo here, this mannequin. Leave the layer called background, just leave that alone, and select low poly action and hit play. Now straight away you'll get a pop-up. Now this first window is asking for the largest polygon size that you want to use. So I've recommended a size here, but after you've run the action you decide that the largest polygon is too small or too big, you can adjust this here. So for this example, we're just going to leave the settings as they were. Click OK. Now the second window is asking for the medium sized polygons. So again, I've recommended a size to use, but you can just drag this handle around to get some different results. So click OK. Now the action is going to take about 40 seconds to complete. So I'll just fast forward the video and see the result. So the action's finished and here's the first look at the result. So if I just zoom in a bit here, see the details. So we're going to jump into the layer panel here, and for this first part of the video I'm just going to run through one folder, and it's the low poly shapes. So this folder here has all the effects. So if you turn the eye on and off for that, you can see the before and after. So the first thing you'll notice that on the low poly shapes folder is a mask, a white mask. So the reason why I've done this is so that you can actually brush in where you want the effect to appear. So if I just grab the paint bucket tool and we turn that to black and we select the mask, fill it in black, it will remove the effect entirely. But if I hit B on the keyboard to get up our brush, and if you want to make the brush size bigger and smaller like this, just use the square brackets left and right to go up and down. Okay, so now I'm going to grab a white brush, and with the mask selected I can just brush in where I want the effect to appear, just like that. Okay. Now if you don't want to have to brush in where you want the effect to appear, another way to hide the mask is if I hold down shift and click on it, it will put a big X to it and hide it. So let's jump inside the low poly shapes folder and see what layers we have. So the top three purple ones are big white lines, small white lines and tiny white lines. By default the tiny ones are turned off, but if I turn it on you can see what it's done there. It's outlined all the small polygons. So if I turn all these three layers off, you can clearly see what they're doing. Okay, so let's start off with the big white lines. Now the way this layer works is that the lines are mapped to the large polygons that you selected in that very first pop-up of the action. Okay, so if again, this layer has a mask, and this mask is mapped to the large polygons. So if I hold down Alt, click on this mask, we go inside it, and you see the white areas are where those lines are going to appear. So if I just click back onto our layer, you can see the white lines there mapped to the highlights of your photo. But if I click on the mask, grab my white brush again, I can actually brush in some more white lines like this. Okay, so you got complete flexibility there of where you want those lines to appear. Let's undo that. And that's the same for the small white lines. Okay, if I you can see here that the small white lines are mapped to the mid-tones of your photos. So if I grab a black brush, I can actually mask out some of those lines. See there? And I can brush them back in if I wanted to. And that's the same for the tiny white lines. Okay, so we'll just leave those off for the moment and go down the layer order. Next we have some groups of coloured layers. We have the red representing the tiny poly shapes. So if I turn this layer off, you can see that we're hiding the small. I'll just zoom in a bit. So if you look around his eye when I turn this on, see how we're turning on the small polygons? Now these small polygons are mapped to the shadows of your photo. So all the dark areas is where those tiny poly shapes will appear. And again, there is a mask on this layer. So if I click on Alt again to click on the mask and go back inside, and you can see the white areas are where it's going to be mapped to. So again, say if I don't want tiny polygons here, I can grab my black brush and I can just erase it, just like that, around his mouth. Okay, and if I switch back to my white brush, I can brush in, say if I just want these tiny polygons right around the edge here. Okay, and if I create a bigger brush and say lower the opacity of the brush to 50%, I can sort of fade in to the other polygons. Okay, so going down the layer order, next we have the small poly shapes. If I turn this one on and off, you can see around his nose and his cheeks, you can see that the small poly shapes are mapped to the mid-tones of your photo. Okay, so again, you can brush into the mask to erase it or bring it into other areas. Just exactly the same as the tiny poly shapes layer works. And again, same thing for the large poly shapes. You can brush in where you want it to appear and not appear. Okay, so on these poly shaped layers, above them are, you can see small poly contrast, tiny poly contrast, large poly contrast. So if I zoom out, okay, and I double click on the large poly contrast layer, this is where you can adjust the contrast of those polygons. So I can bring this down and then I can bring this handle up, just like that, and you can do the same for these other layers. Okay, so that's how those layers work. So we'll go ahead, we'll turn these back on. Let's take a look at the tiny ones. Yep, we'll leave that on. So another thing you can do here to create like a split screen effect is if I go up into the load poly folder, that's got a mask on it as well. So I can just grab the rectangular marquee tool and draw a box around half of our photo, fill that in black, zoom in, and you can see what the action has created for us. Okay, so next up I'm going to open up a new photo and we're going to create a design out of it using this action. So now I have open a photo of a parrot and we're going to use the low poly action to create a design out of it. So again, we just go into our actions panel and click play on the low poly action. Now I might just make the first cell size of our polygons a little smaller, and then we'll leave this one out how it is. Click OK, and again I'll just fast forward the video to get to the result. Okay, so here's our result, and there's quite a few things I want to do to this. So let's just hide the actions panel. Now the first thing I want to do here is I want to brush in where I want these polygons to appear. So I'm going to select our mask, going to fill it black to hide it all. Next I'm going to grab my brush, a white brush, and I'm just going to brush in where I want the polygons to appear. Okay. Down through here, tail. Okay, so we'll leave that how it is for the moment, and I want to talk to you about these other two folders that the actions created. So if we just go inside the design extras folder and we just go down the layer order and tick on the visibility for them. So this one here, abstract highlight edges, this is just a subtle detail that it's a real case by case situation with each photo. Tick it on, see if it works for your photo. If you want to add that little bit of detail, turn it off if you don't want it. Random lines, these ones here will run around certain contours of your photo, so tick that one on if you want to use it. Little tip, if you want to turn these to white lines, have the layer selected, invert the layer, Control I on a PC, and change the blend mode to screen, and you'll have white lines. Okay, layer below, contour lining. Again, these ones run around contours of your photo, so you can have this one turned on if you want it. You can also lower the opacity down. Layer below, vector highlight fill. Again, this is a case by case effect with each photo. Turn it on if it works for your photo, leave it on, if not, turn it off. So if you turn all these four on, you can see it just adds a whole heap of different random details that can help give your photo that abstract look. So let's go ahead and turn that off for the moment. Edge highlights, go into this folder. Now if I just turn all these layers on, you can see that it highlights all different sorts of things around our photo. So let's just go down from the top, soft edge highlight. This will just add some subtle details around edges of your photo. So if you look through his chest, when I turn that on and off. Strong edge highlight, layer below. So this one is a bit bolder throughout the edges. So again, all these effects have layer masks on them. So say if I turn that on and off, I like what it's doing through his feathers, I can just fill this mask in black, hide it all, grab our brush and brush through here. Okay, polygon edge, black polygon edges. If I turn that one on, you can see what that effect does. You can lower the opacity of that down if you want to use that layer. And abstract edge highlight. This one again runs around contours of your photo, so turn that one on, see if it works for your photo. If not, turn it off. Okay, going up the layer order, we have reveal original highlights. So if I turn that layer on, you'll see that it brings back the original photo details, but only in the highlights. So by default, the opacity of this layer is set to 50. So if I drag it up to 100, you can see that at work there. Okay, so now I quite like what it's doing around the top here. So what I'm going to do is just fill this mask in black. I'm just going to brush in the details around the top. Okay, next contrast, turn that one on. If it's too high, you can lower the opacity down, just like that. Okay, so let's now go back into our load poly shapes folder, and we're going to change up some of the details here. So let's go inside. Now first things first, I'm going to just hide the white lines and see what we have. Okay, so I'm just going to brush in some of the details here. So around his head, we need to clean up these edges here. So what I might do to do that first is on the low poly shapes mask, I'm just going to brush out these details all together, clean up the edge. Okay, something like that. And we're going to take a look at the big white lines. I'm just going to brush in out these lines here. Oops. Brush out those lines. Next we'll turn on the small white lines. I might erase some of it up here. On his tail. Leave that turned off. So next I want to brush in some tiny polygons around the edge of his head here. So just with the tiny poly shapes layer mask selected, I can brush in those details around his head. Go down through his tummy. Do that. Down through the stick. Okay, next I want to check out the contrast of these polygon shapes. So let's just okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So one last thing I might check is what his neck looks like with these tiny polygon shapes brushed out. So I'll just select that mask and remove it. Okay, so what I might do here is a good pattern formed here, so I might try and brush in just these tiny ones in the black area. Just like that, and there's our result. So if I just go to our low poly folder and turn it on and off, you can see the effect of just spending a minute or two just brushing in the details and focusing on the finer details like the lines around the polygon edges, where you want it to appear, where you want the tiny polygon shapes to appear. So if we hide this mask, you can see that that was our initial result from the action, and that's just with a couple minutes work. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the next photo. Okay, so we have opened our next photo, so let's go ahead and play the low poly action. Play, and we're just going to leave these settings how they are. Okay. Let me fast forward the video to the result. So here's our result. So we're going to jump straight into it and let's build a design out of this. So The first thing I want to look at is brushing out some of the details around this area here. So let's just grab our black brush and erase some of these details. Bring some of it back in. Okay, so let's take a look at turning on our tiny white lines. I think that looks better with it on. So let's take a look at adjusting the contrast with our polygon shapes. So bring that down a little bit. About there, our large shapes, and that looks pretty good. So let's jump into our design extras and see how these affect the design. That looks pretty good. I might just convert this to white, so again with the layer selected, Control I to invert it and select the blend mode to screen. Contour lining, it's probably a bit too much for what we want, though it kind of looks cool around his headphones, so I'm just going to fill this layer mask in black. Whoops, sorry, wrong layer, this one. I'm just going to brush in those details around the headphones. I'll move that one off. Let's go into the edge highlights. Again, I might just brush in the details around the headphones. A bit around here. His eye. Black polygon edges, kind of looks cool, so we'll just lower the opacity of this a bit. I might check it out how it looks in white, so invert it, set to screen, opacity, okay, we'll just leave that how it is, and we'll keep this one on. It's highlighting the edges really well. Up the top here, let's check out reveal original highlights. So we'll turn that on, leave it about 65% opacity. Contrast, bring this opacity right down, bring it up, something like that. Brush out some of those highlight details around here. And I might just brush out some of these small black dots you can see in the headphones. So if I come in from the edge highlight folder, so if I just grab the mask and brush out those details. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. So if we just turn off the visibility for the low poly folder, you can see what we've created in just a couple minutes. Now, to grade all my photos, I recommend using my set of 200 photo looks. I use them pretty much for everything. Really simple to use. So let's go ahead and just color this photo. So another tip, if you run the action and you're not happy with the polygon sizes, just simply select the folder, delete it, then run the action again. It's that simple. So let's go ahead and flatten all these layers. Hit Control E. Control E again. So we've just got a background layer. So with my photo looks, you've got a folder full of contrast presets, and then you've got 200 different color looks. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to apply some HDR, click play, and I'll just lower the opacity of this, and now I'm going to go down and apply a bit of color. So we'll test some of these out. The way these actions work, they create two layers. They create a color layer and a luminosity layer. So if you turn off the luminosity, you can see it keeps the original contrast, or you can turn off the color and just add the contrast. So let's try a couple more. That's pretty cool. Try warming. Okay, I like that one. Alright, so I'll just group these and compare that against the original. And there's our finished design. So I hope you like the action. I hope you have fun using it. You can come up with some really cool results pretty fast. So yeah, if you've got any questions, just let me know, and good luck.